Hi, I'd like to talk a little bit about the size and state of the language industry in 2026. And I'm going to share just a brief overview that you may find helpful because the language services industry, it is still growing, but it's growing at a slower, much more uneven rate than what we've been used to. Growth is no longer broad-based. It is very selective. It's certainly technology driven. And at the center of that, it's obviously AI. AI is the central force that is reshaping both expansion in some areas and decline in others. A useful report is the latest 2026 NIMSY market report. It includes areas that are clearly growing, such as interpreting, remote or healthcare. And why are these growing? Well, to some degree, real-time communication, it can't yet be fully automated. There's regulatory and human critical context that require accuracy and human expertise. Also, the AI related language services, the higher value layer, is kind of where the action is. Growth, it's not in raw translation, it's in almost AI adjacent services, data annotation for AI model training and fine tuning, linguistic validation and evaluation, and domain specific AI customization. So there's a shift happening from low cost data labeling, for example, to expert validation and that domain expertise. And a key insight is that AI is actually creating demand, but that demand is very much in the higher skilled linguistic work. So let's talk a little bit about LSPs for a moment, localization service providers. There's been a lot of talk lately about global content providers, language service integrators. But the bottom line here, I think, is that the tech forward LSPs, the AI first companies, if you like, the companies that are integrating automation and AI workflows as part of their operational um, setup, they're the ones that are gaining share. AI native providers, interestingly, are scaling faster than traditional firms. And what are the characteristics of some of the people that are winning here? Well, heavy automation, platform-based delivery integration with enterprise AI workflows. And an interesting observation is that mid-market providers, companies in the sweet spot of around 50 million to 200 million US dollars, in that sort of range, they are showing at this moment in time the strongest growth rates. So when you think about, well, why is this? Why are they showing better growth rates? Well, it's possibly down to the fact that they're more agile than larger incumbents. They're more scalable than the smaller agencies, and they seem to be better positioned to adopt AI quickly. When it comes to productivity, revenue per employee seems to be up, and automation, AI assisted workflows is certainly helping to power productivity in some areas. Um, what does that mean? Well, I think we've all seen it. Leaner teams, there are fewer people in some teams. And these leaner teams are becoming more common in companies, but they're also beginning to produce more output with fewer people. Acquisitions, of course, they always remain a bit of a growth. Acquisitions, of course, they always remain a bit of a growth lever. And it's interesting to see how many companies are achieving a lot of growth, almost extreme growth with consolidation. Um, Also, not everything's rosy. There are some areas in decline and very much under pressure. The traditional translation, core LSP work, if you like, it's still huge. It's still a big part of what happens, but structurally, it's seeing weakening. Growth is certainly slowing there. And why is that slowing? Well, there's a few things happening. There's obviously machine translation, LLM-based tools. There's pricing pressure. And what are the trends? Well, it's becoming even more commoditized than it once was. There are lower margins and, unfortunately, less differentiation. The other things that are maybe struggling a little bit are the lower value linguistic tasks. These are declining segments, and things like basic translations, simple content localization, bulk data labeling without expertise, because automation is replacing volume work. And of course, you've got buyer expectation high that they can reduce costs. Unfortunately, many smaller firms are actually stagnating or even shrinking. The market is still fragmented, but when you look at some of the larger companies, the top 50 or the top 100, that share is slightly declining, and the mid-market is the area where it seems to be outperforming. Now, with companies slow to adopt AI, we see a clear divide in performance because the larger tech-enabled firms are benefiting, whereas others are reporting revenue decline linked to AI disruption. Overall growth expectations, they're down slightly. The forecast is downgraded with what's driving that. It's economic uncertainty. There's certainly a lot of that around. There's AI adoption. There's hesitation to get more involved with AI and the pricing pressures that I've mentioned. And I suppose one of the interesting and probably most important takeaways is a split. Um, there seems to be a further split of the industry into two distinct areas, or two layers, if you like. The layer that's expanding is AI-enabled services, interpreting high-value linguistic expertise, tech-driven providers, while the contracting layer is commodity translation, manual workflows, the lower skilled linguistic tasks, and anybody who would fit the bill of a non-differentiated agency. So where does this leave us? Well, I think the positive is it's not really a shrinking industry. It is a reallocating one. Demand is moving up the value chain. The technology is compressing the middle and the bottom, and growth now depends on specializations more than ever. Growth now depends on AI integration and service complexities. When it comes to challenges and actions, these include buyers favoring the speed of AI outputs to reduce dependence and, of course, reduce costs and budgets. And I think providers need to act now if they haven't already, because you need to be acting as a consultant. You need to be defending the necessity of human oversight and expertise against the liability risks of AI, of drift, hallucinations, um, of course, regulations. The traditional price per word metric is becoming increasingly impractical in an AI-driven workflow. And to stay profitable, providers are having to move closer, I think, to transitioning, maybe sometimes reluctantly, moving their procurement departments towards like a SaaS style, a software as a service style licensing or platform access fee, hourly productivity models. And experienced linguists are, they're having to flee the tasks of post editing while AI consumes the entry level work. Unfortunately, that young translators often need to build their skills. And language providers are really going to need to invest in rebranding and rethinking their roles as AI conductors to retain the high level experts that are required for complex validation. Where does this leave us then? What's the summary? Well, I think a key takeaway for me when I look at the industry right now is that time spent with your customers, with your clients to discuss these shifts in expectations and the role of experts and linguists in this AI-centric workflow environment is probably the most valuable investment you can make in 2026. Thanks.